The Elemental Champion is a warrior build that focuses on its use of staves to deal incredible elemental damage to enemies. Elemental Champions don't focus on one elemental damage type, but can instead switch between them when they need to on the fly. This is made possible by the different staves they carry and the fact they are only doing melee attacks, allowing them to pump up two-handed to not only increase their damage but also their critical multiplier. Add in Enrage and all of a sudden you're dealing insane elemental damage via melee attacks. Elemental Champions focus primarily on intelligence to increase their damage with all elements, only putting points into wits and memory to gain some initiative and to be able to use the required skills. The reason that we don't crank wits a bit higher here, which I would recommend with an Elementalist type build, is because Elemental Champions can still use all of their attack skills when enraged, where Elementalists cannot. By increasing intelligence as high as we can, when we get our guaranteed criticals from Enrage, they will hit much harder. Elemental Champions use intelligence-based armor, which isn't ideal for this build because you'll be in close proximity to melee units. We'll supplement this with Fortify, but you'll still be on the line between too little and just enough. You'll want armor that has either intelligence or two-handed if possible, only looking for gear with Scoundrel after you've acquired Enrage. Despite the lack of focus on critical chance, I would still place a Fire Rune of Power into your necklace, simply because it's the best from what you can choose from. Place a Frost or Fire Rune of Power into your chest armor to increase intelligence. Weapon-wise, this is a tough build to acquire the right gear for. Elemental Champions change their damage type by switching staves on the fly, which means you'll need one of each type: fire, water, poison, and air. The tough part about this is that it's hard to find a good staff of each type, let alone just a good one in general. Ideally, your staff would have intelligence, initiative, set blinded, set silenced, and at least one rune slot, the more the better. This will allow you to increase the damage of your attacks via intelligence and runes, keep your turn order high, and allow you to mute and blind your opponents, reducing the amount of damage you may take. Elemental Champions take a little bit to get off the ground because they do need to spread some points around early on to get the needed skills. In Act 1, they will need 2 points into Warfare, 1 point into Hydrosophist, 1 point into Geomancer, and 2 points into Scoundrel. Some of these can be achieved via armor and jewelry, which should help, but once these points have been distributed, Elemental Champions will need to start dumping all points they can into two-handed. In Act 2, you'll get Warfare to 3 and then continue to max two-handed and then proceed to dump points into Scoundrel to further increase your critical multiplier. The idea here is that when you enrage, you deal a ton of damage with every attack. As far as talents go, I'd recommend the following. Lone Wolf. This is the obvious talent here and what makes the Lone Wolf build possible. Take this one whenever you're ready to make the jump to Lone Wolf. Opportunist. As with all melee builds, this one talent drastically increases your damage output, so take this one immediately after Lone Wolf. Executioner. This talent is pretty much a must for Lone Wolf, so take it as early as you can. If you've already taken Opportunist and Lone Wolf, this will be near the end of Act 1. Hothead. This talent is listed here because really there aren't too many other good talents for this build, and having some extra critical chance and accuracy don't hurt, particularly the accuracy in this case. Warfare skills. Battle Stomp. A great AoE with a knockdown. You won't be able to take advantage of the knockdown in this build, but the AoE is still very useful. Deals 90% damage to each target, which isn't terrible. Crippling Blow. Although you won't be able to cripple targets with this skill, it still deals 115% damage versus a basic attack. Add in that it hits enemies adjacent to your target, and it's a no-brainer. Blitz Attack, a great gap closer that can often one-shot 2 targets at once. Use after you've used Enrage for best results. Only deals 70% damage to each target though, so keep that in mind. Whirlwind, a tremendous AoE that deals full damage to each target struck. Try to make sure you can hit at least 3 targets when using this, or save it for a moment when you can. Phoenix Dive, if you aren't already in range of an enemy or you can't get to one with Blitz Attack, use this to get where you need to go. Also sets burning on targets with no magic armor on their turn. Enrage. This skill makes this build work plain and simple. Elemental Champions are able to make use of this skill where other builds like Battle Mage and Elementalist cannot, because Mute does not affect melee skills. Thick of the Fight. A great skill that buffs any type of damage for 2 turns dependent on the number of characters around you. Between this skill and Enrage, you should be dealing punishing amounts of damage. Onslaught. This skill deals insane damage, especially after being enraged. Deals 250% damage versus a single target, all but ensuring their death. Save this for the hardest targets in a fight to eliminate them quickly. Miscellaneous skills. Armor of Frost. A great way to buff your magical armor for a few turns. You'll need to do this from time to time, especially in mage-heavy fights. Only needs 1 point into Hydrosophist. Fortify. Pretty much the same as above, except that you have much less physical armor than magic, so you'll absolutely need this if you aren't buffed by a teammate. be sure to use this turn 1. Venom Coating, a good way to add some decent damage to your attacks for 1 AP. It isn't a must for this build, but doesn't hurt to have it just in case either. Use this turn 1 if you slot it. Adrenaline. You'll have points in Scoundrel anyway, so why not take this very good utility skill? Use this when you need a couple more AP to finish a deadly target. Try to avoid using when you know you'll be enraged the following turn. Cloak and Dagger. Not truly needed for this build, but can help with mobility if you find you're lacking. Only takes up 1 memory slot and you'll have points in Scoundrel anyway. When approaching a battle, it's a good idea to save if you can just before and head in and then inspect each enemy and then restart. This will give you a good idea which staff you should use for the upcoming fight and will allow you to have it equipped before entering combat when you reload. You can always change when combat starts, of course, but this will save you 1 AP. Keep in mind that undead are immune to poison damage, so you'll have to change staves mid-combat to kill them if you have one equipped. Much like the Frost Paladin build, I like to spend turn 1 buffing up. I usually cast Fortify, Armor of Frost, Venom Coating, and then any other buff you decided to go with like Uncanny Evasion or Medusa Head. It's really a good idea to leave 2 AP at the end of the turn if you can, but if you need to prioritize positioning so you don't just get lit up by the enemy, do so. Turn 2, if there are no enemies in range of Blitz Attack or Battle Stomp, I use Phoenix Dive to get in position and then use in range. If there are enemies already in range at the beginning of my turn, I use in range straight away. This should allow you 6 AP to attack this turn if you save 2 AP from the last turn, and then next turn you can get 6 AP to attack while enraged again, or 8 if you use Adrenaline. This will help you maximize the effectiveness of Enrage. Lastly, because you don't have very many attack skills, 6, and some do less damage than a normal attack, consider putting 3 points into Polymorph to unlock Skin Graft. This will allow you to refresh your skills, including Enrage, which can really help you out if the fight doesn't end quickly. This will also grant you access to Medusa Head, which petrifies enemies near you with no magic armor. Be sure to check out our other build guides on our channel for each archetype: Warrior, Ranger, Mage, Rogue, and Summoner, with more build guides coming every week. Good luck, Sorcerers. Rivlon is counting on you.